You're listening to Mountain Heartbeat with Joe and Rosa Hopkins, proclaiming the gospel through word and through song.
Hi, and welcome to Mountain Heartbeat. I'm Joe Hopkins. This week, Rosa continues her interview with Jen Christie, who was sexually assaulted and as a result became pregnant. Her and her husband decided to keep their child, and their story has gone viral worldwide. Last week, Rosa talked to Jen, and they reached the point in the story at which she learned that she had become pregnant in Colombia while working on a cruise ship.
No, that was good. I thought you were trying to start like, okay, we got
No. I'm just like, it's just beautiful. That's all.
And it was. And what was really neat, this was not something, that we ever thought we were going to tell anybody, but, the reaction, the response to the small little medical team, the 6, 7, 8 people, whatever, who worked on the ship, who I got to know very well, because whenever there's a trauma on board, and this was considered a trauma, normally they fly you home. And for complicated reasons, out of Colombia at the time, I couldn't be flown home. I was using my license and not a passport, because you don't need a passport on a ship, and now it's different, but whatever. I couldn't be flown home. I had to continue the cruise, which they do not like to do. So I was quarantined the whole time. I was eventually sent to my room, but I could only go back. I had to go back, check in with the medical team twice a day, and I couldn't leave my room. And it was just, I was kind of on like a suicide watch, I'm pretty sure is what they were doing. And so again, I got to know them all very well. They're all, if you've ever been on a cruise, they're all very young. That makes me very self-conscious. They're all very young. Everyone's from a different country, really neat group of people. Everyone's got very different ideas politically, largely depending on what country they're from, and so when I was ready to leave, I wanted to talk to them all. The children, it's neat. I just said, I want to thank you guys. They had been very kind, and their way of showing me support was comforting me with telling me how easy I could abort the baby. And I say this because they really were intending to comfort me, and I could see it. They were tearful. I was getting a lot of hugs, like, it'll be okay. And I didn't have words to say then. I couldn't quite articulate what I wanted to. But they kept saying, like, oh, this is such a horrible thing, and it'll all be over. Like, you'll go home and they'll give you a pill, and it'll be very quick, and then you can move on with your life. That's what I kept hearing. Then you can move on with your life. Then you can forget. And I'd hear that over and over and over again. And I knew, like, that was going to be the siren song. That was what I was going to hear over and over, and I'd have to prepare myself for it. Then you'll be able to forget. Then you'll be able to move on. Then and only then will you be you again. And so I'm kind of internalizing this, and I get them together. It's the last day, and I say, I just want to thank you all for being so kind and so supportive. You've made what could have been a really, really difficult time, or what was a difficult time. It could have been a lot worse, and I just thank you for being your wonderful, caring team. And I said, and if you ever think about this again, and I'm sure you will, and you wonder what happened to me, just know that my husband and I had a beautiful baby in the fall. And dead silence, like just nothingness for a moment. And then the main doctor, the head guy, he looked like he was about 19, probably a little bit older, I don't know. He just kind of smiled at me, and he just said, "Did you ever know you could be so strong?" And I thought I don't really think that has anything to do with it, but I said, no, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. But the one doctor who was with me when we did the pregnancy test was very, she was Ukrainian, and she was very clinical, and she'd always been very, not cold, but very, very professional, and never let a human face kind of cross her features. She was always just very distant, and this is what's going to be done, and this and this and this, and very professional and competent, but never showing any emotion. And she just touched my arm, and she had tears in her eyes, and she didn't say anything. she just like looks at me for a long time, then she turns around and she leaves. And I don't know what happened there. It doesn't really matter, but God did something with her. Something touched her. Good or bad, I don't know. But it moved her. And I remember thinking, this is something. Like, this decision is doing something. Like, it's going to touch people, like, one way or another. Like, God can use me. And I still didn't ever imagine sharing it openly, but I remember thinking, like, God can use this. And then my one favorite nurse, and I talk about her a little bit in one of my stories that I write about this. She actually was really encouraging abortion and just kept saying, oh, this poor little victim doesn't need to be here, doesn't need to live with this burden. And I remember thinking, I don't think she's going to understand. And she didn't stay after I said, we're going to have a beautiful baby. She just walked away. She couldn't take it. And I often wonder what God has done in her heart since. Yeah, I wonder if she's ever read or ever, come across any of these and seen the pictures or saw what has become of me and of him, and if it's ever kind of penetrated her heart. She was a good girl. But so I told them, and I saw that amazing response and knew that it was powerful, that God could work in something like that.
Absolutely. And then so from that point, now you have a pregnancy.
Yeah. Rough pregnancy.
Yeah.
But pregnancy. Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to elaborate?
Well, last time you did. So okay.
Did I? Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
No, I wasn't sure.
Did.
Yeah, it was.
But you don't have to.
No, it's okay. It was a bad pregnancy. I was borderline diabetic, and I had seizures, and I was. They were trying to keep me from developing preeclampsia. I became eclamptic with my first pregnancy, which was quite a few years prior, but that was an issue, and I was having seizures that were it was difficult to control. I was with a wonderful OB. We absolutely love him. I might as well say, with Dr. Greg Brandon, who I mentioned in my first, I wasn't trying to hide who he was. People were like, well, I know who he was. You mentioned that he was running for Senate, and I wasn't trying to hide who he was. They're like, we could figure it out. Well, good for you. It's very clear. I made it clear. But he's wonderful and incredibly strong pro-life Christian, and he loves Jeff. So Jeff was just like, let's go see Dr. Brandon. I'm like, you just like that he loves you. And every time we'd go in for an appointment, he'd be like, oh, there's my couple walking the walk, doing the thing. And it's just nice to get so much affirmation when we were going through a really hard time, and the pregnancy was rough, and we were in there several times a week, and every time we'd go in there, he'd check my blood pressure. He'd be like, all right, gotta go to the hospital. So we'd be in the hospital for a while, and he'd like, we just want to monitor you guys and gotta watch you guys. And so that was pretty much where we spent most of the pregnancy. And then the last several months I was just flat on my back. And but every time we went in there, from the time I think I was either 24 or 26 weeks on, we knew that delivering, every time we went, it was a possibility of having to deliver. And all right, we're going to get a neonatologist to come down and talk to you. And that's never a good conversation to have. And, I've worked with a lot of early deliveries, and worked with a lot of new moms who have babies who are very early. And I know how a lot of those turn out. And I just did not want to have that extra difficulty for my baby, which sounds like a stupid thing to say because it's so obvious, but I just, it was such a fraught with complications pregnancy, and it was hard because I was like, God, we're doing the right thing. We're doing the right thing. Do we really need to have this on top of it? But I think it was just what people so lovingly call building our testimony and his. We wanted, it definitely it brought us closer together, Jeff and I as a couple, and it definitely solidified the feeling of protectiveness. Is that a word? that we felt towards the baby, and, defensiveness for his life.
And so then the baby was born, and
he was.
What has that been for you and for your community and for people that have heard about the story? Because it's been written about in LifeSite News, Live Action News, probably in the Huffington Post here shortly. And it's been written about, it's been translated, and it has moved people and has touched people. So your child is entering the world as somebody who's been written about and talked about and discussed, and he's a beautiful blessing to you, Joshua. And so what has that been like since giving birth to him and all the things that God has brought into your life since then?
Yeah, well, just as far as, having a baby, he's our fifth. We've done that before, and it never gets old. It's never old hat. It's never, oh, there's another baby. It's always exciting, and it's always wonderful. And every time we have a baby, it's a different stage in our life, and we're certainly, this time around, we're older considerably than we were. We have older teenagers. We have one that's out of the house now, and having him, I heard Jeff's interview, and it's different. We're tired, and it's not like we're ancient, but it was a surprise, and it was unexpected, and it's incredible amount of fun, and it's really neat to see our older children, to see how they've put aside some of the teenage selfishness to kind of become sometimes surrogate parents to this little guy, and to take him over, and my oldest likes to drag him around and be like, oh, look, he's mine, and I'm like, that's not funny, and she thinks that's hysterical, and oh yes it is. And my oldest son is just amazing with him, and he's just become, it's just so neat to watch him develop, when taking care of his brother, and he's just been such a light to this family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us this week on Mountain Heartbeat. That's all the time we have for this week. However, Rosa will continue this interview with Jen Christie next week. Same channel, same time. If you'd like to hear this or other fine programming, you can find us online at soundcloud.com/Rosa Hopkins or on youtube.com/Joe and Rosa Hopkins. You can also find us on joeandrosahopkins.com, or if you'd like to read some of Rosa's blog, it's at gutsychristianity.com. Now we'll end our program with a little bit of Christmas in July. Here's O Holy Night.
O holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary soul rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn.
Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, oh, night divine, oh, night when Christ was born.